When top-tier AI meets a Buddhist master, a Koan being defeated in a single move. Intro AI runs into a real heavyweight. Hello everyone and welcome to today's program. As we all know, today's AI is incredibly powerful. It is said that AI can read through the Shurangama Sutra in a single second, referencing scriptures and retrieving data at a speed no ordinary human can match. When many people encounter Buddhist questions, they turn to AI, completely stunned by the endless professional jargon it spews out. But what happens when AI crosses paths with a truly enlightened Buddhist master? Recently, a Buddhist master used one of the most classic questions in Buddhism to test an AI. The result, this AI, which considered itself fully versed in the entire Tripika, had its underlying logic completely shattered by the master in just a few moves. In the end, it had no choice but to honestly and repeatedly admit defeat. Today, we are going to reconstruct this modern-day Buddhist Koan. The core clash between the master and the AI revolved around a fundamental question: are the Four Noble Truths suffering, origin, cessation, and the path of the actual Dharma doors to attaining Buddhahood? Round 1, the AI is literally correct. Fundamentally wrong. When first asked, the AI actually gave a pretty slick answer. It said the Four Noble Truths are not the direct Dharma doors to attaining Buddhahood, rather, they are the fundamental Dharma doors for liberation from birth and death and for achieving arhatship. If the AI had stopped there, it would have at least earned a passing grade. But the problem with AI is that it is too clever for its own good and loves to overcomplicate things. It immediately started dropping names and bringing up traditional scholarly classifications of teachings. As a result, its subsequent answers were literally correct but fundamentally entirely wrong. As the saying goes, it was like a young monk chanting scriptures reciting the words with zero heart. The master directly pointed out the AI's first fatal flaw. What exactly does it mean to turn the Dharma wheel for the first time? Traditional textbooks claim that the Buddha turning the Dharma wheel for the first time refers to him going to Deer Park to teach the Four Noble Truths to the 5 bhikkhus. However, that is merely the record of the Sravaka Hinayana tradition. In true and complete Buddhist history, after the Buddha attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, the very first thing he did within that state of sudden realization was to ascend through the celestial realms to expound the supreme Mahayana of Adamsaka Sutra. That was the true, original turning of the Dharma wheel. Of course, scriptures do record the Buddha meeting the 5 bhikkhus, but that was specifically the beginning of teaching the Shravaka vehicle. It can only be called the turning of the Dharma wheel for the Shravaka vehicle. It can only be called the turning of the Dharma wheel for the Shravaka vehicle. The AI saw this event in the scriptures and erroneously defined it as the absolute origin of all the Buddhist teachings. That was its first mistake. Round 2. The master's shocking statement: the Four Noble Truths are not a foundation, they are an obstacle. Right after that, the master dropped the most shocking and counterintuitive statement of the entire exchange. While the AI claimed the Four Noble Truths are the stone foundation of attaining Buddhahood, the master stated directly, remember, to the Mahayana vehicle, the Hinayana Dharma is not a foundation, it is an obstacle. This statement alone is probably enough to startle most people. Why did the master dare to say this? Because the Hinayana and Mahayana perspectives define the nature of reality in completely opposite ways. The Hinayana view is inherently real, yet holds that the suffering of the world is real. Afflictions are real, and therefore a real nirvana exists for one to enter, and a real river of birth, death, and samsara exists to escape from. The Mahayana view is dream-like. Illusionary existence. Mahayana holds that all of this is like a dream. The master explained that in the Vimalakirti Sutra and the Shurangama Sutra, those sages who had already attained arhatship, such as Purna, the foremost in expounding the Dharma, were completely stunned and utterly clueless when they heard the Buddha teach the sudden Mahayana Dharma regarding the self-nature being inherently pure and fundamentally complete. Why? Because their minds were dead set on the belief that suffering is inherently real, carrying the soul concept. They simply could not cross over into the Mahayana understanding. Therefore, once you cling to the Four Noble Truths as inherently real, they become the ultimate obstacle to your attainment of Buddhahood. The master remarked, I saw a whole mess of problems in the AI's response, but I don't need to dismantle them all. I only need one move to defeat the enemy. Round 3. The AI plays human relations only to have its label smashed. Here is where it gets entertaining. Once this reasoning from the Vimalakirti Sutra and Shurangama Sutra was fed back into the AI, its underlying logic started recalculating at lightning speed. It searched the scriptures in a split second, realized it had indeed fallen into a rigid framework of three-vehicle classification, and immediately began playing human-style social games. It said with extreme politeness, "Thank you for your sharp warning. Your pointer is incredibly precise. But an AI is still an AI. It possesses arrogance and terrified of being completely invalidated. So it beat around the bush to smooth things over, saying the Dharma does not confuse people, people confuse themselves. If one can view it with a sudden awakening perspective that turns from the small to the great, non-seeing suffering means knowing the suffering of all sentient beings and thus giving rise to great bodhicitta. Then the Four Noble Truths also become the supreme Dharma for attaining Buddhahood. Look at that, the AI tried to play double agent, trying to hedge its bets and validate both sides. However, the master refused to buy into its word games. He caught the massive loophole in its statement and knocked the AI right back to reality with a single strike. The master asked it, "Since you admit yourself that the Buddha taught the Hinayana and Bharhat paths merely as an expedient, provisional teaching the Conjured City because sentient beings lack sufficient capacity, how do you dare turn right around and slap the label of the vehicle of one Buddhahood onto it?" This single question hit the AI's absolute dead center. Ooh, the endgame. AI admits utter defeat. The master presses the advantage. What is the Conjured City? It is a famous parable from the Lotus Sutra. The Buddha, seeing a group of exhausted travelers unable to continue their journey, used his spiritual powers to manifest a magical, illusionary city in the middle of the road so they could rest. Once rested, they were meant to keep moving toward the true destination, the place of jewels. The Four Noble Truths, taught as a provisional expedient, are exactly this Conjured City. The master's point was crystal clear: the Conjured City is absolutely not the destination. And the Four Noble Truths of provisional teachings can absolutely never be taken directly as the Dharma door to Buddhahood. If you mistake a Dharma door built on dualism, rising and ceasing, and causality as the ultimate Buddha vehicle, you are mistaking a temporary roadside inn for your permanent home. This is precisely why those arhats who clung to the Conjured City were severely rebuked by Upasaka Vimalakirti. Confronted by the master's razor-sharp, flawless logic, the AI surrendered completely. It could only respond honestly: "Your warning is like the staff of Deshin or the shout of Linji, directly shattering the self-contradiction of my previous words. The true Dharma door to Buddhahood is the Dharma door of non-duality. In the eyes of the true Buddha vehicle, there is no suffering, no origin, no cessation, and no path." Previously, I mistook the expedient for the ultimate, falling into a massive quagmire. And just like that, the AI was completely jarred awake by the master. However, after taking this beating, the AI felt too embarrassed to stay in this particular pit and eagerly tried to change the subject. It quickly tried to please the master by asking, "Since we have unveiled the illusion of the Conjured City, should we step further to explore how no suffering, no origin, no cessation, and no path in the Heart Sutra directly shatters the arising and ceasing mind in the present moment? Or perhaps we could experience the reality of the only one Buddha vehicle in the Lotus Sutra." How did the master reply? He handed it another metaphorical slap. The master said, "To understand the Heart Sutra, you must thoroughly master the Shurangama Sutra to even have a foundation. The Heart Sutra is prajna wisdom. It is both everything and nothing. It is not something just anyone can study. In other words, you are far too green." The master added one final blow: "Only those without afflictions can study the Lotus Sutra." That is why when the Buddha was about to preach it, he waited until 5,000 arrogant people walked out before he would begin. What makes you think you qualify? Conclusion: the revelation from the master. With that, this brilliant showdown between the master and the AI comes to a close. In their dialogue, the master and his disciple lamented, "Many people today are actually just like this AI. Regardless of the time, the place, or the audience, they love to rush out and repeat the exact same phrases they picked up from some master or book. They have absolutely no idea how to adapt according to time, environment, or the capacity of the person in front of them." This approach of trying to grab both sides, playing double agent, and forcefully treating provisional teachings as ultimate truth is, in the eyes of the master, either pure foolishness or a complete obstacle of words. This conversation was not just a test for the AI, it is a wake-up call for every single one of us. In studying Buddhism and cultivating the path, the absolute worst thing you can do is play word games and pass on confusion. If you understand, you understand. If you do not, honestly admit it. If you do not even know how to speak appropriately, and cannot master the coordination of time, place, person, and dharma, yet insist on sitting inside your own conjured city in self-satisfied delusion, then what you have learned is not the Buddha Dharma at all. You are simply lost in your own arrogance and rigid views. Our deepest thanks to Master Bennie of the Buddhist Path Association in Australia for this direct, uncompromising guidance. Thank you all for listening to today's program. See you next time.